actually went to see that when I was quite little, and it was one of the most bedazzling sights of my life. Starlings that live in cities can be noisy and messy, but they are an impressive sight when they fill the skies in their vast flocks to depart from or return to their roosting sites, which are usually under a bridge like a pier or in large buildings. Flocking and roosting together in groups helps the starlings keep safe from predators and also keep warm in winter. But they are still an incredible sight when they flock together in the evenings across the cities to return to where they roost for the evening. Starlings stay in Britain all year round, so they don't migrate, but younger individuals will quite often travel further so that the population is more spread out. And some even reach France or Belgium. While the ones who do stay in Britain are joined by other birds that are trying to escape the frozen weather from northern Europe. Well, starling adults don't need to travel very far because they don't need to, because their ability to allow them to continue finding food means they can carry on looking for prey and other things to eat throughout the year, while many other birds have just given up and flown south. Starlings feed on a wide variety of things. Their diet is made up of invertebrates, which are creatures without a backbone, and that includes spiders, moths, leather jackets and earthworms, as well as fruit. They often feed on lawns or pastures, probing the ground with their beaks. And there are also regular visitors to garden feeders where they can feed on seeds, nuts and table scraps put out by humans, and these can also help them see through the winter. Starlings usually begin breeding in late February and continue through June. Males choose the nesting site and begin trying to attract a female. Courtship behaviour usually consists of the male perching near his nesting site, crowing and waving his wings to when a female flies close by. Then they usually nest in trees, but they can live on buildings, although that depends where they live. They usually nest in large numbers to keep safe from predators and also to keep warm. Starlings are very common in gardens because they are considered garden birds, and if you find that starlings are eating all the bird food you put out for them on the bird table, make sure you keep your feeders well stocked, and feed your garden birds early in the morning, because starlings tend to eat later in the day. And the national starling population has fallen dramatically over the last few decades, declining by 50% since the 1970s. So it is important to keep count of them when you are watching them in your garden. Starlings may be in decline in farmland areas, like many other birds which have been driven further and further into urban areas. But they aren't very rare and are still found across much of Britain, so quite often you'll see them in a squabbling group on a rooftop or in a garden. While they're very social birds, their presence quite often leads to frequent quarrelling. This is their range. As you can see, they are only summer visitors to the Highlands of Scotland because it tends to be very, very cold out there. And the next creature I'm going to show you is one of our most common birds of prey, but also the world's master of hovering, kestrel. The kestrel is one of the smallest falcons in the UK and the world's master of hovering, which you usually see either hovering above the roads or perched on a roadside telegraph pole. Of course, how you tell them apart from male to female is with the males, they're the ones that have the blue head and tail, but the females are all brown. And of course, they are small birds, so they don't take very large prey. I mean, most of what they eat are voles, rats, and mice, and lizards, invertebrates, and of course, but voles make up 50 or 80% of its diet. And in fact, back in the days of falconry, the kestrel was the bird that only the knave, who was at the low end of the table, was allowed to fly. And of course, the kestrel only eats field voles and mice. And of course, if you gut and skin a mouse, there wouldn't really be a lot left to eat. And kestrels usually mate for life, and they will nest in either a tree or on a cliff, or sometimes in a man-made nest box. And they usually have about 3 chicks, and will protect and feed them day in and day out. And females generally breed when they are about 1 year old, possibly, but some males tend to take a year longer to maturity, as they do in related species. So, same in some birds of prey, the females mature quicker than the males. Of course, kestrels are known as the masters of hovering. They hover above grasslands that they hunt on by keeping their head completely still and making micro adjustments to their wings and tail to keep them stable. And they also hunt using very powerful eyesight, because their favourite prey are voles, which are small and very hard to find. But the kestrel actually has a layer of cells at the back of their eyes that have UV sensors, and which not only allows them to see the voles, but also their urine. And by following the trail, it leads them straight to the voles. Then it dives down in the classic falcon dive, and boom! Well, with a kestrel around, you certainly wouldn't want to be a vole. Of course, this is their range in Britain, found across much of Britain, but also in some parts of Europe. The next animal I'm going to show you all is probably the most common creature we have in Britain, the rabbit. Now, rabbits are probably the most common mammals found in Britain. They're found across the country in large numbers for protection, but they are also a species that it was not originally from Britain, believe it or not. While rabbits are small, furry animals with long ears and short, fluffy tails, they also have strong and large hind legs. They have 2 pairs of sharp incisors, front teeth, 1 pair on the top, 1 pair on the bottom, and they're used for grinding up vegetation like grass. And of course, they also have brown fur with a white tail and underside, but they also have powerful hind legs that can deliver a lethal kick to any predator like a stoat. And they can also run very fast to evade birds of prey like hawks, buzzards and eagles. Of course, rabbits are an animal that aren't originally from Britain. In fact, it's believed that they were either brought over from mainland Europe by the Normans 900 years ago, or by the Anglo-Saxons 1,000 years years or more ago, 1,000 or more years ago, or it might have been the Romans, because the Romans brought a lot of animals over to Britain that we didn't have. And since then, they have bred like wildfire and spread all across Britain. But they have become a huge part of the British ecosystem and a big part of the food chain of Britain. And rabbits often live in large colonies containing a number of social groups. And each of these can consist of 3 bucks, which are males, and 5 does, females, and has its own territory. And there is a dominance hierarchy among males and females. Both sexes are very aggressive towards the lower ranking females, and, well, the lower ranking members, I mean. And rabbits live in holes in the ground called burrows, and of course the big colonies of rabbits have a whole system of burrows that are called a warren, and they use them to shelter from the weather, to hide from predators like buzzards, eagles and hawks, but also they also use them to raise their young, called kittens, which can be 3 or 7 kittens per litter. They're born deaf, blind and hairless, but can open their eyes after 10 days and are weaned for about 25 days. Rabbits live in a wide variety of habitats, from meadows, woods, forests, grasslands and wetlands. They are herbivores, so they feed on vegetation, like grass and flowers, and they will even steal people's vegetables, like Peter Rabbit, who was created by Beatrix Potter. And rabbits are also preyed upon by foxes, dogs, cats, and birds of prey like buzzards, hawks and eagles, and even stoats. This doesn't affect the population as a whole, because rabbits are widespread throughout Britain and quite often seen across the British countryside, and of course they breed very, very heavily. Of course, here is the rabbit's range. As you can see, they're found across all of Britain, really, even towards a few of the islands off the mainland, like the Shetlands, Orkney, and even the Isle of Mull, the Isle of Skye, and the Isle of Arran. Now, the next animal I'm going to show you is our second most common bird of prey, and also the master hunter, ambush hunter, of the British parks and gardens. It is the sparrowhawk. Sparrowhawks are the second largest hawk in the UK, the largest title belonging to the elusive goshawk. But they are an ambush predator of British gardens and woodlands. When it comes to identifying the male from the female, the male, like all birds of prey, is generally smaller than the female. He also has a greyish-blue back with a orange and white underside. The female is larger and is larger and stronger, and also has a dark brown back. But also, the female can catch bigger things than the male. And of course, because both the male and the female have very long legs, which I will get to in a moment. Sparrowhawks hunt a wide variety of prey. They can catch prey. The males can only catch prey from robins, finches, starlings, and tits, along with blackbirds, thrushes, and all other small songbirds you see in your garden. but females can catch prey as big